Welcome to the Real Lost Boss Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Real Lost Boss Podcast. Half a century of episodes. I don't know how we got here, but we have got here. Well, I'll tell you how we've got here because of your support. And I just want to say a very quick thank you. However long you've followed the podcast for, whether it's from day one, we've been doing it for nearly 2 years now, or you've just recently discovered it and started listening to it, I wouldn't keep churning out the episodes if I didn't get the positive feedback that I get. So thank you very much. And please keep the positive feedback coming. And if you haven't got positive feedback, just keep it to yourself. It's all good. Anyway, let's crack on with episode 50. Logic is lost in the world of weight loss. There is so much misinformation out there regarding weight loss. Honestly, there is lie after lie after lie told. When one lie gets debunked, there seems to be a new one. There are certain lies that are just hanging around like a bad smell and we can't get rid of them. Why? Why is there so much misinformation? Why are so many lies told about weight loss? It really is simple. People that are desperate to achieve something, anything, are easy to influence. They're vulnerable, so they're easy to influence. People that are easy to influence are easy to take, vulnerable people are easy to take advantage of. That's it, right? And if you take advantage of people, generally, you can extract money from them. The weight loss industry in the UK alone in 2025 is projected to be worth over £12 billion. And people think they have to lie and misinform people to get a slice of that pie. Stop telling porcupines. You don't need to. And it's something I've prided myself on because I've fallen for all these myths. I've been taken advantage of so many times. And when I started, my personal training business and I have moved now into online coaching, I've always prided myself on truth. I'll only ever drop truth bombs. Now, when I started my weight loss journey in 2014, I made a pact to myself that I'm going to do weight loss different to any way that I have done it in the past. And, when I started doing something, I was like, I've done this in the past, it didn't work, I stopped doing it. And then I'd have a little look and I'd be like, do you know what? I've never done this before. I've never had a takeaway once a week before. Let's do that. At the time, I probably thought I was being a bit bonkers, but I thought, do you know what? No, let's have a takeaway once a week. And that's because I started to think about things a bit more logically. Why I started having a takeaway once a week was because the day before I was starting my weight loss journey, I went for a Chinese and I'm studying my Chinese in my local Chinese. And, there were people, it was a busy time. There was probably about 10 people in there waiting for orders. It was really busy actually. And I remember looking around going, that chap over there has got a little bit of a tummy on him, but everyone else in here doesn't really seem to have a weight issue. Why can all these people eat Chinese food and not have a weight issue, whereas I seem to smell a spring roll and I gained 10 pounds. A family of 4 were in front of me. And I remember the guy behind the counter reading out a name like Johnson. And they were like, yeah, that's us. And he was like, that's £29.87 or something like that. So they paid up and went. And then next, Scurra, yeah, that's me. That'll be £34.60. And don't get me wrong, there was a chow mein in there for my mum, but I'm like, that's why, Neil. That's why. A bit of honesty, but a bit of logic. The honest truth is, Neil, you're ordering as much food for one person as that family of 4 have just ordered for a family of 4. So the week after, I went for a Chinese and I ordered enough food for one person. Main course, fried rice. Don't get me wrong, I love going to a Chinese and having a bit of everything, but I didn't just have a bit of everything, I had a lot of everything. So I had main course, fried rice. I enjoyed it. There was no guilt behind it because it was a portion for one person. And I was like, So I started thinking logically. I am a logical thinker. There's probably a condition or something to describe it. But I'm very straightforward thinking, if that makes sense. And I started doing that with weight loss. I've dedicated my life over the last 8, 9, 10 years to how weight loss works, the physiology of it, the psychology of it. I always look at things very rational. In fact, it drives Rachel, my wife, crazy at times, but it's just who I am. And I started to look at weight loss myths logically. And don't get me wrong, there's loads of science out there to debunk all these weight loss myths. You know, I follow a couple of people, I follow a lot of people on social media around weight loss, but two names spring to mind when it comes to sort of debunking with like peer-reviewed studies. I'm not into that. It's not my bag. I haven't really got time to do all that research, but I follow a few people that do that. One in the UK is Dr. Ids. So he'll debunk myths around health and weight loss, and he will show systematic peer-reviewed studies to back up his claims. It's amazing. People still argue with him even when he literally lays on a plate. This is the evidence. Whereas someone walking down a supermarket goes, don't eat this because it's full of junk, without any evidence whatsoever or context, and people just believe it. We've got a medical doctor, and I'm not saying all medical doctors are great in nutrition, they're generally not. He's got a master's in nutrition, has spent time dedicating some of his free time, I suppose, though I assume he earns money off TikTok, but finding out these sort of systematic reviews and posting it there, and people will still argue with it. Yet some bodybuilder walks down a supermarket and goes, this is rubbish, don't eat it, and walks off, and people are like, don't eat that. Honestly, that is how toxic the industry is. I also follow a guy in America called Lane Norton, and he's exactly kind of this. He's kind of like an American Dr. Ids. All great content, very honest, very truthful, non-biased, and uses, you know, systematic studies to prove his points across. Anyway, the purpose of this podcast is you don't need to always look at science and data to kind of debunk these myths. You can look at things logically. And I think that's where my strengths come across. So in this podcast, I'm going to go through a few sort of myths, and then we'll look at why it's a load of nonsense, like logically. All right, one of the biggest myths out there is carbohydrates. And that is, like I said before, carbs, there's lies that are clinging around like a bad smell. And this thing, carbs make us fat, carbs make us fat. You can't lose weight on carbs. Why that comes around, well, there's a few different reasons why it comes around, but we can look at it logically. Carbs make us fat. Let's look at two nations that have one of the longest life expectancies, that are one of the healthiest, or a couple of the healthiest nations in the world, and they're one of the largest consumers of carbohydrates. I think the issue with carbs is a blanket term. So a lot of people just relate carbs to like sweet treat cakes, pies, pasties, biscuits, crisps, potato fries. I went a bit American then, chips or French fries, pizza. Bread gets a bad rap. Whereas carbs covers fruits, veggies, it covers beans, lentils, pulses, oats, whole grains. It covers a whole plethora of foods. Italians, largest consumer of pasta in the world. Can't eat pasta and lose weight. Italians, largest consumers of pasta in the world. The Japanese, one of the largest consumers of white rice in the world. Two, very fast digesting, high glycemic carbohydrates. Two nations that consume a hell of a lot. I'm not saying there isn't overweight people in Japan, Italy. I'm not saying there's not overweight people in Japan, but on a whole, those two nations consume loads of carbs, right? But their percentage of obesity is around what ours was in the 70s, about 5% or something like that. It's just logical thinking. It just really is logical thinking. And, you might be like, well, it's the Italian genetic. It's not. It's the fact that alongside eating a lot of carbs, Italians eat a Mediterranean diet. They eat a lot of olives. They eat a lot of veggies, tomatoes, fruits, other fruits. They eat a lot of fish. They eat a lot of, leaner meats. They have a lot of healthy fats like olive oil. They eat pizza as well, and this, that, and the other. They also have a diet that's fairly low in ultra-processed foods. Now, don't get me wrong, in this day and age, we do have quite a few ultra-processed foods that do provide a bit of nutrition. But we also have a lot of ultra-processed foods that have zero nutrition, and if overconsumed, are detrimental to our health. In the UK, we do consume a lot of ultra-processed foods, and that overconsumption is detrimental to our health. Low nutrition, ultra-processed foods. Like I say, there are now ultra-processed foods that have a decent amount of nutrition in them, right? Just because something's made in a lab, it's not made in a lab, it's made in a factory. I hate that terminology. But anyway, but Italians eat a lot less nutritionally dense ultra-processed foods. They don't overconsume saturated fats, they don't overconsume sugar, they don't overconsume calories. And, Japanese are exactly the same. That's just logical thinking. Like I said, there's lots of systematic reviews out there to go, we gave 3,000 people carbohydrates on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. We gave another 3,000 people low carb diet, ketogenic diet on 2,000 calories a day. Guess what? They both lost the same amount of fat. In fact, the people on the carbohydrate diet actually lost more fat than the people on the ketogenic diet because they found it easier to adhere to sticking to 2,000 calories because they had a more varied diet. That's the science. But logically, we've got nations out there that eat tons of carbs that don't have a weight issue. And they're not anomalies, right? They can't defy the laws of physics. It's just because they don't overconsume calories, and they're so healthy because they don't overconsume stuff that is detrimental to our health. There we go. That's number one. I have got a bit of a list here, by the way. I always say this, I never plan my podcast, but I have got a bit of a list. Starvation mode, something that keeps cropping up all the time on my content. Starvation mode. You can't lose weight if you consume too fewer calories. Absolute nonsense. Let's think about this logically. Unfortunately, there are people out there that suffer with under-eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia. Go walk into a mental health hospital, because that is what eating disorders is classed as. Go walk onto a ward where people are struggling or suffering, with anorexia and bulimia to the point where they are emaciated and malnourished, and say, well, you're not like that because you've eaten too fewer calories, because, it's not down to calorie consumption why they're like that. Because if you only eat 600 calories a day, you stop losing fat. Really? Again, I always use as well logical thinking, countries that suffer famine. When you watch your Oxfam adverts in the afternoon where, they're asking for aid to help countries suffering with famine, you don't see lots of overweight people, in Ethiopia walking around that haven't eaten properly for 6-7 months because of drought, because they're not eating enough food. Yeah, no, they're all right. Those people that live in countries that suffer with famine, don't worry about them, because as soon as you stop eating enough calories, your body goes into starvation mode and you don't lose body fat anyway. Logical thinking. It is just mind-numbing. But your influencers, your personal trainers, it's because you're not eating enough calories. And why people lie about it is people think you need to eat ridiculously low amounts of calories to lose weight. So when you get someone that comes along and goes, you're not losing weight because you're not eating enough, I'm now going to put you on 2,000 calories a day rather than 1,200. You're like, I'd love to eat 2,000 calories and lose weight. I knew there was a reason why eating 1,200, and because this personal trainer or whatever is putting me on that, they're a hero. Don't get me wrong, I give people healthy calorie allowances, but I tell them why, right? Why I give you maybe 2,000 calories a day instead of 1,200 calories a day, because over-restricting yourself, and this is the reason why you don't lose weight eating 1,200 calories a day. It's not because you're not eating 1,200 calories a day. It's not because you're eating too fewer calories. It's because you're eating too many. You think you're eating 1,200 calories a day. You're actually eating 2,500 calories a day because you're giving yourself that restrict and binge mentality. But we convince ourselves we're not doing that. Whereas if I give you 2,000 calories a day, there's no restrict and binge mentality. So you're a lot more consistent at sticking to your calorie deficit. It really is that simple. But if you think you're not losing weight because you're not eating enough, just think of people that suffer with anorexia or people that live in countries that suffer famine. Are they going through the same issues as you? No. And again, no one's a medical anomaly. No one can defy the laws of physics. Next one. Certain foods cause you to lose weight. I fell for this during my weight loss journey. 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. Before I became a personal trainer and really started to dedicate learning how weight loss worked, I still fell for some myths. and I was taking raspberry ketone tablets, drinking green tea, having hot sauce and everything because chili helps you burn more fat and this and that and the other. And it is just absolute nonsense. And the only logical way to think about that is, if it was so simple that drinking green tea and having hot sauce on, having chili in your meals caused weight loss, everyone would be doing it. This is when we sort of talk, when we actually think about something, you go, how hard is it to have 2 cups of green tea a day, right? And that's what you need to do to help with your weight loss. Now, don't get me wrong. There might be some properties in green tea. I mean, there's some antioxidants in green tea, so there's some goodness in there for your health. But there is very limited evidence to say that it does anything. The only thing it could possibly do is help to suppress appetite, which limits the amount of calories you are or you feel like you want. But, logically, if something so simple, just eating certain types of food caused weight loss, people would do it. And people would do it consistently because we're like, I don't do any exercise. I've not changed my diet. I just have 2 cups of green tea a day and I'll lose this weight. And it doesn't work like that. Okay, next one. Intense exercise is required for weight loss. This is a big thing from personal trainers. And personal trainers do it because a lot of people that go to personal trainers, they go for weight loss, right? So, personal trainers want you to believe you have to do lots of exercise to lose weight. And it was something I actually hated about the personal training industry, when the truth is, exercise, the only thing that causes us to lose weight is to consume less calories than we burn. And even if you go to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, it's only ever going to make up 5 to 10% of your overall calorie burn. Such a minuscule amount. But intense exercise is required to lose weight. If we look at this logically, in the mid-60s, 2% of the UK population were obese. 2%. Now, in 2025, it's about 30%. In 2025, there is over 7,000 registered gyms, health clubs in the UK. In 1960, I don't actually know the data, but I do know the data from 1990, and it was about 2,000. So the industry in 30 years has tripled. And since 1994 to 2004, obesity in the UK has doubled. The amount of registered places where you can go and do regular exercise has tripled. No one, or a very small minority of people, went to a gym and exercised, or actually did any type of exercise in 1960, because we were much more active on a day-to-day basis. Now, only 17% of the UK population in 24-25 has a gym membership, but we exercise way more now than we ever have done, yet weight issues are way more severe than they ever have been. So to think exercise, and it's like the old saying goes, you can't out-train a bad diet. Trust me, doing exercise has a domino effect. If you are fit and healthy, physically, you'll be much fitter and healthier mentally. And if you're physically fit and mentally fit, that helps. It just makes, controlling your calories easier. But flogging your bottom off in a gym day in, day out, and you think that is going to be the key to you losing weight, it really isn't. Okay, let's go for one that is a massive, and I kind of see where this myth or lie has come from, but correlation isn't causation is what you need to think of with this one. Eating late at night causes you to gain weight, right? And why, like I say, correlation, causation, there is a big trend of people that have a weight issue that eat a lot of food later at night time. So people have put 2 and 2 together and got 5. People aren't overweight because they eat at night time. They're overweight because they overconsume calories. They overconsume calories in the morning, at dinner time, in the afternoon, in the evening, so on and so forth. But if we think logically about this, if eating at 9 o'clock at night, is it like the calories triple in food? Right, it's 8:59 or it's 7:59. And this bag of crisps is 100 calories. now it's 8 o'clock. That bag of crisps is 3,000 calories. It just doesn't work like that. But what about shift workers? What about people that are on permanent nights? Does every single person that works nights, that eat throughout the night, and you might be like, well, their calendar's different. Their calendar's different. Their nighttime is their day. It just doesn't work like that. What about if I go into a different time zone? So 8 o'clock at night in the UK is 8 o'clock at night. 8 o'clock at night in the UK is 2 p.m. in New York. So if I fly to New York and I eat at 2 p.m. because my body clock is used to UK, that means I automatically go, it just doesn't make sense, right? It just doesn't make sense. Overeating is what causes weight gain. And yes, there is a correlation of people that have weight issues overeat later at night time. But if you ate nothing all day, if you did the OMAD diet, 1 meal a day, type of intermittent fasting, and you ate your only meal at 9 p.m. at night time, do you think you'd gain weight? No. Why? Because there's a good chance if you only eat once a day, you're going to be in a calorie deficit. 2 newer ones that I'm going to talk about now, and these are the last 2 for this podcast. Number 1, high cortisol levels. Cortisol is our stress hormone. And if our cortisol levels are elevated for long periods of time, it leads to things like depression, and it can increase anxiety and stress and mood swings and things like that. But a lot of people talk about hormone imbalance and weight loss and weight gain. And a lot of people say that if your cortisol levels are high, it causes you to gain fat. No, it doesn't. Nothing causes you to gain fat other than overconsumption of calories. But how can we look at high cortisol levels and, basically what you're saying there is every single person that has stressful jobs, stressful lives are fat because they've got high cortisol levels. And it just isn't the case. You can think of some, bigwigs, and don't get me wrong, do they probably have a decent standard of living? Do they have to worry about money? No. And because money is most people's main worry, you just think people that have got money have no worries, and that is just nonsense. But we can look at some of the richest people in the world. The richest person in the world is Elon Musk. Number 2, I think, is Jeff Bezos that owns Amazon. Don't quote me on that one. But are those 2 men that will undoubtedly, yes, they've probably got very nice houses and very nice cars, and they don't need to worry about how to pay the gas and electric at the end of the month, but they are CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world. Are their stress levels going to be high? I would say yes. Just because they've got loads of money in the bank doesn't mean they're not stressed, right? Are they overweight? No, right? What about other people that have stressful jobs? Footballers. Again, you might sit there and go, they get 300 grand a week. They just run around on a pitch. It doesn't, the pressure that is on professional, certainly if you're playing at a high level, like, you're at some of the top teams in the UK, in Spain, in England, in Spain, right? And the cameras are constantly on you. You're never out of the papers. They will constantly feel a burden on them, and they will subconsciously struggle with stress quite a bit, but they don't have any weight issues. So to sort of pinpoint certain hormones and say, well, if that hormone, it causes you to gain weight. And again, no one's a medical anomaly. No one can defy the laws of physics, right? It's now, why would high cortisol, I've just said there, it increases depression, it increases stress, anger. High cortisol levels, permanent in the body, is not good. Why? If you have a weight issue. Because it will trigger emotional eating. We only emotionally eat through negative emotion, right? We emotionally eat through fear, anger, depression, sadness, loneliness. All these things increase your cortisol level. So again, it's a bit of a 2 + 2 = 5. So yeah, if you're constantly stressed, you're probably constantly overeating, but it's not the cortisol levels that are causing you to gain weight. It's kind of a byproduct of it. But like I say, think of how many people in the world have really stressful jobs. Prime ministers, Keir Starmer, who was the last prime minister? Rishi Sunak, Boris in COVID. I'm not saying they did good jobs. I'm not saying that. But whoever they were at the time, you couldn't have paid me enough money to, in COVID, have been Boris or Chris Whitty, scientific advisor, or the other Patrick, whatever his name, that was always stood next to him on the lectern. You couldn't have given me enough money to have done those jobs in those time. Were they all overweight? No. In fact, Boris got COVID and lost 50 pounds because it scared him. In probably one of the most stressful environments he could have been in, he lost 50 pounds. So again, thinking logically about it, it just doesn't quite add up. And the last one for this podcast, and I think this is a big one, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. I'm seeing it in a lot more comments on social media. I'm seeing a lot of influencers push this one out. There's a certain influencer that eats a lot of eggs that pushes this one out, and that is insulin. Insulin levels. If you have insulin present in your body, it causes you to gain weight. So don't eat carbs, don't raise your insulin, don't eat sugar and all that. And it's a load of nonsense. Basically, why they come to this conclusion, there's a model called the carbo-insulin model. It came out 70s, late 70s. It's been debunked a million times. And it basically talks about, let me get the terminology right. I think it's lipogenesis it's called. But basically, when you eat calories, those calories store as fat, right? It really is that simple. We have two energy sources. One's carbohydrates, which is basically glycogen in our cells, which is glucose from carbs stored in our cells for energy, and we have fat. To use fat as energy, you have to store fat. So it doesn't quite work as if I eat 2,000 calories, I use those 2,000 calories as energy, and then any additional energy that I need if I'm in a calorie deficit, I get it from my stored fat. Your body just doesn't use calories from food. Your body has to convert the calories in food into an energy source known by the body. So a car just doesn't use crude oil. It uses petrol that is refined from crude oil to power it, right? Well, the body uses fat mainly to power it, refined from calories that we consume. So, and you have to have insulin present, or insulin present helps fat be stored in the body. So people think, right, well, if I'm eating food and that just stores as fat, I can't lose fat. Of course you can. It's like if you've got £100 in the bank and you withdraw £2 and you pay in £1. So every day I pay in £1 into the bank. I've got 100 quid. Every day I pay in £1, but I draw out 2. That means I've got 99 quid. The next day I pay in £1 and draw out 2. I've got 98. The next day I pay in £1 and draw out 2. I've got 97. So I'm constantly paying money in. So I'm constantly putting fat into my body. But because I'm taking out more money out of my bank account than I'm putting in, the stored money, the saved money in my account is reducing. That's how calorie deficit works. You know, you eat 2,000 calories, you're going to put 2,000 calories worth of fat into your body. But if you burn 3,000 calories, you're going to take out 3,000, and that leaves you minus 1,000. So your body fat reduces. Now, we can look at this logically in a couple of ways though, right? You might be like, no, it doesn't work like that. Fine. Let's look at it logically. We have two groups of people we can look at. One is a very new group of people. Two have been a group of people for a long time. Number one is type 1 diabetics. Type 1 diabetics inject insulin every day, several times a day, right? Is every type 1 diabetic overweight? No. We have certain type 1 diabetics that are overweight because they overconsume calories. We have other diabetics that are a healthy weight because they don't overconsume calories. Both of them purposefully inject insulin into their body every single day. Group 2, a new group of people, weight loss injections, and this is a biggie. Weight loss injections, you are injecting a GLP-1. A GLP-1 is a hormone that basically tells your pancreas to release more insulin, to produce more insulin and release more insulin, because it is a type 2 diabetic medication. It is designed mainly for people with insulin resistance to reverse. It doesn't reverse insulin resistance, but it counterbalances it. You got insulin resistance, you don't release enough insulin, right? The GLP-1 hormone in Mounjaro tells your body to release. And whether you're diabetic or not, if you are taking a weight loss injection, your body is releasing lots of insulin. Yeah, people on weight loss injections seem to be losing a decent amount of weight. I'm not saying everyone does. I'm not saying I always say this about social media. People only sing when they're winning. There's lots of people currently taking Mounjaro that won't be having successful weight loss journeys, but there are people taking Mounjaro that are doing well. I've got now 17 clients on my one-to-one plan that are taking Mounjaro at the same time to help them suppress their appetite and reduce the food noise in their mind. And everyone seems to be doing pretty well on their weight loss journey. They seem to be controlling their calories a lot more than losing weight. So these 17 clients, all on Mounjaro, that all have lots of insulin roaming around in their body because they are taking a GLP-1 mimicking hormone, Mounjaro once a week, or you might be doing a Ozempic or something like that where you take it daily, yet they're losing weight. So the fact that, this blatant you can't lose weight if you have insulin present because insulin is a fat storing hormone is a load of nonsense. Yes, it is a fat storing hormone. Thermodynamics will always win. If you consume less calories than you burn, you will always lose body fat. And you need to store fat for your calories to be used as energy. It really is that simple. But we have people, two groups, that purposely put insulin into their body. And like I said, I'm not saying people on that type 1 diabetics are constantly losing weight, but I know lots, well, I don't know lots, but I know 3 type 1 diabetics in the gym because I've talked to them all that are all in great shape and they inject insulin 3-4 times a day. And like I say, that second group, your GLP-1s, your weight loss injections, lots of insulin flooding around in their body, consistently losing weight. There you go. That's just a little logic myth buster episode for you. Like I say, sometimes it's hard to think logically about things. And, a lot of influencers out there get what I call a God complex because of the way they look. We certainly, when it comes to weight loss or fitness or health, we just go, if you look like that, you're obviously great at weight loss, great at health, great at fitness. And the honest truth is, those people know that. So they're willing or more than happy to lie to you because they know you are easy to influence. You are vulnerable because you're desperate to achieve something. And there's lots of influencers out there that have made a lot of money off people by telling lies. Try and think logically about it. If you've got any myths at all that you're kind of swaying towards, I believe it, get it in the comments and I'll try and give you a logical reason why it's a load of nonsense. Anyway, there we go. That is it for episode 50. Bit of a different one, I think, that one. Yeah, there we go. As always, let everyone know about The Real Lost Boss. Obviously, if you like me, of course. If you don't like me, you don't need to tell. Just keep it to yourself. It's all good. All right, make sure you're following. Make sure you're following all my other channels. Thank you, as always, for the support. Thank you for getting me to 50 episodes of the podcast. And as always, until next time, make sure you are bossing your weight loss.